The sledgehammer strikes concrete as Marcus tears down his backyard pool, sweat mixing with determination. 3 hours later, police sirens wail outside his house. Karen Peterson stands on his lawn, arms crossed, smiling that cold smile he knows too well. "Officer, this man is destroying property values and violating city ordinances," she declares. But what Karen doesn't know is that Marcus just discovered something buried beneath that pool. Something that's about to turn her perfect suburban world upside down and reveal secrets that should have stayed buried forever. The sledgehammer felt heavier with each swing, but Marcus Thompson refused to stop. Concrete chunks scattered across his backyard as he demolished the in-ground pool that had dominated the space for 15 years. Sweat poured down his dark skin, mixing determination with exhaustion, but every crack in that pristine blue surface felt like a victory. "Dad, maybe we should hire professionals," his 17-year-old daughter Zoe called from the back porch, concern evident in her voice. Marcus paused, wiping his forehead with the back of his work glove. "This is something I need to do myself, baby girl. Trust me." The pool had been Jessica's dream when they'd moved to Maple Grove. His late wife had spent countless hours planning the perfect backyard oasis, complete with a waterfall feature and built-in spa. But Jessica had been gone for 8 months now, claimed by cancer at 42, and the pool had become a monument to everything Marcus had lost. He raised the sledgehammer again, muscles screaming in protest. The morning sun beat down mercilessly, but he welcomed the physical pain. It distracted from the emotional wreckage that threatened to consume him daily. "Excuse me! Excuse me!" The shrill voice cut through the morning air like fingernails on a chalkboard. Marcus didn't need to turn around to know who was marching across his lawn. Karen Peterson, self-appointed guardian of neighborhood standards, approached with her signature power walk. Shoulders back, clipboard in hand, lips pursed, in perpetual disapproval. "Marcus Thompson, what exactly do you think you're doing?" He set the sledgehammer down and faced her. Karen stood 5'4" in her pristine white tennis shoes, blonde bob perfectly styled despite the early hour. Her pink yoga outfit probably cost more than Marcus made in a week at the manufacturing plant. "I'm removing my pool, Karen. Last I checked, it was still my property." "Don't get smart with me." Karen's blue eyes flashed with indignation. "This is a gross violation of city ordinances. You can't just destroy major home improvements without proper permits. Do you have any idea what this is doing to property values?" Marcus almost laughed. Property values. Of course, that's what concerned Karen most. Not that he was a widower trying to rebuild his life, not that the pool held too many painful memories. Just dollars and cents. "I researched the ordinances, Karen. I'm within my rights as long as I properly fill and grade the space afterward." "We'll see about that." Karen's manicured fingers flew across her phone screen. "I'm calling the city planning office right now, and if they don't handle this properly, I'm calling the police." "The police?" Zoe stepped forward, her young face flushed with anger. "Mrs. Peterson, my dad isn't doing anything wrong. Why can't you just leave us alone?" Karen's expression softened with fake sympathy. "Oh, sweetheart, I know this has been hard since your mother passed, but your father is making rash decisions that affect the entire neighborhood. Sometimes adults need to be reminded of their responsibilities." The condescending tone made Marcus's jaw clench. "Zoe, go inside." "But Dad, inside. Now." His daughter shot Karen a withering look before disappearing into the house. Marcus waited until he heard the back door close before speaking. "Let me make something very clear, Karen. My wife is dead. My daughter is trying to heal from losing her mother. This pool is a daily reminder of everything we've lost, and I'm removing it. If you have a problem with that, take it up with City Hall, but stop harassing my family." Karen's fake sympathy vanished, replaced by cold calculation. "I see grief has made you unreasonable. Fine. I'll handle this through proper channels." She turned on her heel, and marched back toward her immaculate colonial house next door. Marcus watched her go, then picked up his sledgehammer. The pool wasn't going anywhere, and neither was he. By noon, Marcus had broken through most of the shallow end. The work was backbreaking, but therapeutic. Each swing represented another step forward, another piece of the past he could finally let go. He was attacking a particularly stubborn section near the deep end when his sledgehammer struck something that didn't sound like concrete. The impact sent vibrations up his arms, but instead of the familiar crack of breaking cement, he heard a metallic clang. Marcus frowned and cleared away loose debris. Embedded in the concrete, barely visible beneath years of settled material, was the corner of what looked like a metal container. His heart rate quickened as he carefully chipped away more concrete around the edges. It was definitely a box, stainless steel, about the size of a large shoebox, sealed tight against moisture. Marcus glanced toward Karen's house, making sure she wasn't watching, then worked quickly to free the container from its concrete prison. The box was heavier than expected, and completely unmarked. A combination lock secured the latch, but the mechanism looked old, probably from the 70s or 80s. Marcus carried it to his garage and set it on his workbench, mind racing. Who would bury a locked box beneath a concrete pool, and why? The pool had been installed in 2008, 2 years after they'd bought the house from the previous owners, an elderly couple named the Mitchells who'd moved to Florida. But this box looked much older than that, which meant, Dad. Zoe appeared in the garage doorway. There are police cars in front of our house. Marcus's stomach dropped. Through the garage windows, he could see 2 squad cars parked at the curb, their presence drawing curious neighbors from their homes. Karen Peterson stood on her front porch, arms crossed, watching the scene unfold with obvious satisfaction. "Stay here," Marcus told Zoe, quickly throwing a tarp over the metal box. "Don't let anyone in the garage." He walked to his front yard where 2 officers were examining the pool demolition. The older cop, a heavy-set man with graying temples, looked up as Marcus approached. "Mr. Thompson? I'm Officer Rodriguez. This is Officer Kim. We received a complaint about unauthorized construction activity." Marcus felt his temper flare but kept his voice steady. "What kind of complaint?" "Ma'am says you're destroying property without permits, possibly violating building codes and homeowner association regulations." "I don't belong to an HOA, and I checked the city ordinances before I started. I'm not required to have permits for pool removal as long as I properly backfill and grade the area." Officer Kim, a younger Asian woman, consulted her notepad. "The complainant also mentioned potential environmental hazards, says you might be contaminating groundwater or disturbing utility lines." Marcus gestured toward his backyard. "Feel free to take a look. I'm breaking up concrete with a sledgehammer, not dumping chemicals or digging near utility lines." The officers exchanged glances. Rodriguez seemed sympathetic, but Kim appeared more skeptical. They followed Marcus to the backyard, where the demolished pool sections lay scattered like broken teeth. "Looks like standard demolition work to me," Rodriguez observed. "You planning to fill this in professionally?" "Absolutely. I've already contacted a contractor about proper backfill and grading." Karen Peterson materialized beside them as if summoned. "Officers, I'm glad you're taking this seriously. This man has been acting erratically since his wife died. Yesterday, I caught him digging around in that pool like he was looking for something." Marcus's blood ran cold. Had Karen seen him find the box? "Ma'am, grieving doesn't make someone a criminal," Rodriguez said patiently, "and property owners have considerable latitude in home improvements." "But what about the environmental impact? The noise ordinances? The effect on property values?" Officer Kim stepped forward. "Mr. Thompson, are you doing the work during permitted hours?" "I started at 8 this morning. City noise ordinances allow construction work between 7 a.m. and 6 p.m. on weekdays. And you're confident about the permit requirements?" Marcus pulled out his phone and showed them the city website he'd bookmarked. Section 15.3a, pool removal. Requires no permits provided proper backfill procedures are followed and utility companies are notified in advance. I've already called the utility marking service. Rodriguez nodded. Seems like you've done your homework. He turned to Karen. Ma'am, unless there's an actual safety hazard or ordinance violation, we can't force someone to stop legal work on their own property. Karen's face flushed red. This is ridiculous. He's destroying the neighborhood. He's improving his property according to city guidelines, Kim said firmly. If you have concerns about HOA violations, that's a civil matter, not a criminal one. I told you there's no HOA, Marcus interjected. Karen's composure finally cracked. You people don't understand. This neighborhood has standards. We can't just let everyone do whatever they want. The officers exchanged another look, this one less sympathetic to Karen's cause. Rodriguez cleared his throat. Ma'am, I'd recommend focusing on your own property. Mr. Thompson appears to be well within his rights. As the police prepared to leave, Karen made one last desperate play. What if I told you he found something? The leather journal felt like it was burning Marcus's fingers as he stared at Karen Peterson's name written in careful script across the top of the first page. But it wasn't just her name. It was Karen Henley, age 16, followed by a date from 1975 and an address he didn't recognize. Marcus's hands shook as he flipped through more pages. The journal was meticulous, almost clinical in its documentation, names, ages, addresses, dates, all accompanied by corresponding numbers that seemed to reference the photographs. Young people, mostly teenagers, with notes written beside their entries in the same careful handwriting. The photographs made his stomach turn. Black and white images of minors in compromising situations, some clearly taken without consent, others obviously staged. The quality suggested professional equipment, and the consistent lighting indicated they'd been taken in the same location repeatedly. Marcus slammed the journal shut and pushed back from his workbench. This wasn't just some old family secret. This was evidence of systematic abuse. And somehow, Karen Peterson had been involved. His phone buzzed again. Another unknown number. Put it back where you found it. You have 24 hours. Marcus's garage door rattled as someone knocked loudly. His heart hammered as he quickly shoved the journal and photos back into the metal box and threw the tarp over it. Marcus, I saw your garage light on. The voice belonged to Detective Sarah Chen, a family friend who'd helped them navigate the legal complexities after Jessica's death. Can I come in? Marcus hesitated, then opened the door. Sarah stood in his driveway wearing jeans and a redskin sweatshirt, her black hair pulled back in a ponytail. Off-duty, but her cop instincts were always active. Hey, Sarah. Kind of late for a social call, isn't it? She stepped inside, glancing around the garage with professional curiosity. I heard there was some drama here today. Karen Peterson called the station 3 times this afternoon, demanding we arrest you for destroying the neighborhood. The responding officers cleared everything up. I'm not breaking any laws. Sarah nodded, but didn't seem entirely convinced. Marcus, I've known you for 5 years. You're one of the most methodical people I've ever met. Suddenly demolishing your pool with a sledgehammer doesn't seem like you. Marcus felt the weight of the hidden box behind him. Sarah was a good cop and a better friend, but what he'd found was too dangerous to share, especially until he understood the full scope of what he was dealing with. Jessica loved that pool. Now it just reminds me of everything I've lost. I need to move forward, and that means getting rid of the things that keep me trapped in the past. Sarah studied his face with the intensity that made her an excellent detective. Okay, but if something else is going on, something that made you suddenly decide to tear up your backyard, you know you can trust me, right? Before Marcus could answer, his phone rang. The caller ID showed Zoe's number, even though she was upstairs in bed. Dad? His daughter's voice was barely a whisper. There's someone in our backyard. Marcus's blood ran cold. Where are you? My bedroom. I heard noises by the pool, so I looked out my window. There's someone with a flashlight walking around the hole you made. Sarah was already moving toward the door. Stay on the line with her, she told Marcus quietly. I'm going around back. Marcus followed Sarah out of the garage, his phone pressed to his ear. Zoe, lock your bedroom door and stay away from the windows. We're handling it. They crept around the side of the house, Sarah's hand resting on her off-duty weapon. The backyard was dark except for the yellow glow of streetlights filtering through the fence boards. But there, a small beam of light dancing across the demolished pool area. Sarah signaled for Marcus to stay back, then stepped into the yard. Police! Show! Me, your hands! The flashlight beam spun toward them, temporarily blinding them both. Marcus heard running footsteps, the rattle of his back fence, and then silence. Sarah swept the yard with her own flashlight while Marcus ran to check the pool area. The intruder had been focused on the exact spot where he'd found the buried box. Fresh footprints marked the area, and someone had been digging with their hands, trying to find something in the rubble. They're gone, Sarah announced, holstering her weapon. Probably went over the back fence into the Peterson property. Marcus's stomach dropped. Karen's backyard? Could be a coincidence. These lots all connect. Sarah examined the disturbed area with her flashlight. What exactly were they looking for, Marcus? The question hung in the air like an accusation. Sarah knew something was off, and her detective instincts wouldn't let her ignore the obvious connections. Marcus made a split-second decision. There's something I need to show you, but not here, and not now. Can you meet me tomorrow morning? Somewhere private? Sarah stared at him for a long moment. How private are we talking? Life and death private. 20 minutes later, Sarah was gone and Marcus was triple-checking his door locks. Zoe sat at the kitchen table, still shaken by the intruder. Dad, what's really going on? And don't tell me it's just about removing the pool. Marcus looked at his daughter, Jessica's eyes staring back at him, filled with the same determination that had made his wife such a formidable woman. Zoe was 17, nearly an adult, and she deserved some version of the truth. I found something when I was demolishing the pool, something that was buried there a long time ago, probably before we even moved here. What kind of something? The kind that makes people desperate enough to sneak into our backyard at night. Marcus sat across from her. I'm meeting Detective Chen tomorrow to figure out how to handle it properly. Until then, I need you to be extra careful. Don't go anywhere alone. And if anyone approaches you asking questions about me or the pool, you call me immediately. Zoe's face paled. Dad, you're scaring me. Good. Scared keeps you safe. Marcus reached across the table and squeezed her hand. Your mom always said the most dangerous secrets are the ones people will kill to protect. I think we just stumbled into one of those. That night, Marcus barely slept. Every sound made him reach for the baseball bat he'd placed beside his bed. The threatening text messages had stopped, but that somehow felt more ominous than reassuring. At 3 a.m., he crept downstairs and peered out his front window. Karen's house was dark, except for a single light in what he knew was her home office. He could see her silhouette moving back and forth, as if she was pacing. What was Karen Peterson doing awake at 3 in the morning? And why did her teenage name appear in a journal full of documented abuse from 1975? Marcus returned to bed, but couldn't stop thinking about the implications. If Karen had been a victim, that would explain her adult need for control and perfection. But it wouldn't explain why someone was threatening him to keep the evidence buried, unless Karen wasn't just a victim, unless she'd become something else entirely. The next morning, Marcus met Sarah at Riverside Park, a sprawling area with enough space to have private conversations without being overheard. She was waiting by the duck pond, coffee cup in hand, looking like she hadn't slept much either. Okay, she said without preamble. Show me what's got you so spooked. Marcus had brought the journal and a few of the less disturbing photographs. He handed them to Sarah and watched her face change as she realized what she was looking at. Jesus Christ, Marcus. Where did you find this? Buried in concrete beneath my pool. The box had been there for decades. Sarah flipped through the journal, her expression growing darker with each page. These names, some of them are familiar. Look at this. Michael Torres, 1976. I went to high school with a Mike Torres. He's a city councilman now. Keep looking. Sarah found Karen's entry and went completely still. Karen Henley. That was Peterson's maiden name, I figured. But look at the notation beside her name. Sarah read aloud. Special project, recurring participant, payment arranged through HM. She looked up at Marcus. What does HM mean? I don't know, but I think someone was running an organized operation, targeting teenagers, photography, documentation, maybe worse, and Karen Peterson was involved. Sarah closed the journal and studied the photographs again, her cop brain processing the evidence. The photo quality is too good for amateur work. Professional lighting, composition, development, someone with serious resources was behind this. The Bay. Previous owners of my house were named Mitchell, Harold and Martha Mitchell, H.M. Harold Mitchell. Sarah pulled out her phone and began typing. Let me run a quick background check. While Sarah worked, Marcus scanned the park for any signs. They were being watched. A jogger passed by, earbuds in, paying them no attention. An elderly man fed ducks at the pond's edge. Everything looked normal, but Marcus felt exposed. Here we go, Sarah said, reading from her phone. Harold Mitchell died in 2019 at age 87, survived by his wife Martha and 2 adult children. Before retirement, he worked as... Holy shit! What? He was a photographer, ran a commercial photography studio downtown for over 40 years, specialized in portraits and event photography. The pieces clicked into place with horrifying clarity. Harold Mitchell had used his professional equipment and expertise to document systematic abuse of minors. He'd buried the evidence beneath his backyard, planning to build a pool over it to ensure it would never be discovered. There's more, Sarah continued reading. Says here he was also involved in community youth programs, Little League, church youth groups, summer camps. Part 3, Sarah's police radio crackled to life as they raced toward downtown, where Harold Mitchell's old photography studio had been located. All units, we have a silver alert for Martha Mitchell, age 85, missing from Shady Oaks Nursing Home. Last seen leaving with a blonde woman in her 50s driving a white Lexus SUV. Marcus's hands clenched into fists. Karen took Martha too. Why would she need an 85-year-old woman? Because Martha Mitchell is the only living witness to what really happened in the 70s, Sarah replied, weaving through traffic, with her emergency lights flashing. If Karen's been protecting her all these years, there's a reason. Marcus's phone buzzed with another message from Zoe's number. 1247 Industrial Boulevard. Come alone, or your daughter pays for your curiosity. You have 1 hour. Sarah glanced at the address. That's the old warehouse district. Most of those buildings have been abandoned for years. I'm going in alone, like they said. Like hell you are. Sarah grabbed her radio. Dispatch, I need tactical units and negotiators at 1247 Industrial Boulevard. Possible hostage situation involving a minor. Sarah, they said come alone. Marcus, listen to me. Sarah's voice was sharp with authority. I've seen what desperation makes people do. Karen Peterson has spent decades protecting a secret that could destroy multiple lives. She's not going to just let Zoe go because you show up. Marcus stared out the window at the passing cityscape, his mind racing. There has to be more to this. Why keep Martha Mitchell alive all these years? Why not just let her die naturally and bury the secret forever? Maybe Martha Mitchell knows where more evidence is hidden. Or maybe... Sarah paused, a terrible realization crossing her face. Maybe the abuse never stopped. The implication hit Marcus like a physical blow. You think Karen's been continuing what Harold Mitchell started? Think about it. She was a victim who became a participant. That's textbook grooming behavior. And she's had access to the neighborhood kids for decades, coaching Little League, organizing block parties, running the community watch program. Marcus felt sick. How many children had Karen Peterson had access to over the years? How many families had trusted her because she seemed like the perfect neighbor? They pulled into the industrial district as backup units arrived from multiple directions. The area was a graveyard of defunct businesses, empty warehouses, abandoned loading docks, and broken windows that stared out like dead eyes. For 7 Industrial Boulevard was a 3-story brick building with Mitchell Photography, commercial and portrait services, still faintly visible on a weathered sign. Police units positioned themselves around the perimeter while Sarah coordinated with the tactical team leader. Heat signatures show 4 people inside, the tactical commander reported. 3 on the ground floor, 1 on the second floor. No. Movement from the second floor subject. Could be injured or restrained. Marcus's heart hammered. That's probably Martha Mitchell. She's 85 and was taken from a nursing home. What about the other 3? My daughter, Karen Peterson, and possibly someone else we don't know about. Sarah's radio squawked with an incoming call from inside the building. This is Karen Peterson. I want to speak with Marcus Thompson. Only Marcus Thompson. The tactical commander handed Marcus a headset. Keep her talking. The longer she talks, the more time we have to position our people. Marcus keyed the microphone with shaking hands. Karen, this is Marcus. Is my daughter safe? She's fine for now. But that depends entirely on your cooperation. Karen's voice sounded different over the radio, calmer, more controlled than he'd ever heard her. You found something that doesn't belong to you, Marcus, something that could hurt a lot of people. I found evidence of child abuse, Karen. Evidence that should have been turned over to police decades ago. A long pause. When Karen spoke again, her voice carried a note of sadness. You don't understand the complexity of the situation. Those children, they were protected. They were cared for. What Harold did wasn't abuse. It was preservation. Marcus felt his stomach turn. Preservation of what? Beauty. Innocence. The fleeting moment when young people transition from childhood to adulthood. Harold documented something precious that society wants to pretend doesn't exist. Sarah was frantically signaling to Marcus, drawing her finger across her throat. She wanted him to end the conversation, but Marcus knew he had to keep Karen talking. Is that what you told yourself when you were 16? That being photographed and documented was preservation? Another long pause. You really don't understand, do you? I wasn't a victim, Marcus. I was chosen, selected for something special. Harold and Martha showed me that there was power in being desired, in being the subject of art. Karen, what you're describing is grooming. Harold Mitchell was a pedophile who convinced you that abuse was art. No! Karen's voice cracked over the radio. You're trying to make it ugly, but it wasn't ugly. It was beautiful. We were beautiful. Sarah leaned close to Marcus and whispered, She's completely dissociated from reality. This is going to get worse before it gets better. The tactical commander pointed toward the building. Through a grimy first-floor window, Marcus could see movement, a figure pacing back and forth. Karen was agitated, and agitated hostage-takers made deadly mistakes. Karen, Marcus said into the microphone, let me come in and we can talk about this face-to-face. Just you and me. And the dozen police officers you brought with you? They're here because I'm scared, Karen. I'm a father whose daughter is being held by someone I don't understand. Help me understand. Marcus waited, hoping his appeal to her need for validation would work. Karen Peterson had spent her adult life seeking control and recognition. If he could position himself as a student rather than a threat. You can come in, Karen said finally. But if I see anyone else, if I even think you've brought back up inside, your daughter will pay the price. Do you understand me, Marcus? I understand. Sarah grabbed his arm as he stood up. Marcus, we have snipers positioned, thermal imaging, and a tactical team ready to breach. Let us handle this. She's had access to our neighborhood kids for decades, Sarah. If there are other victims, other evidence, Zoe might be the only one. Who can lead us to them? Or she might be the next victim if you walk into that building. Marcus looked at the weathered photography studio where decades of abuse had been documented and preserved, where his daughter was now being held by a woman who believed she was protecting art rather than perpetuating horror. I'm going in, he said, but I need you to promise me something. If this goes wrong, if Karen Peterson kills me and Zoe, don't let this secret die with us. Find the other victims. Find the other evidence. Make sure Harold Mitchell's legacy dies with him. Sarah's eyes filled with tears, but she nodded. I promise. Marcus walked toward the building, every step feeling like a mile. Behind him, he could hear Sarah coordinating with the tactical team, positioning officers for multiple entry points, setting up containment protocols. The front door of Mitchell Photography stood slightly ajar, and Marcus could smell the musty scent of abandonment mixed with something else. Chemicals, maybe, or cleaning supplies. He pushed the door open and stepped into a reception area frozen in time. The walls were covered with photographs, professional portraits, wedding shots, family pictures, all from decades past. But interspersed among the legitimate work were other images that made Marcus's skin crawl. Children and teenagers posed in ways that seemed innocent at first glance but carried undertones of something darker. Close the door behind you, Marcus. Karen's voice came from deeper in the building. Marcus complied, then followed the sound through a narrow hallway lined with more photographs. These were different, candid shots of children in various states. Of undress, some clearly taken without consent, others obviously staged. He found Karen in what had once been Harold Mitchell's main studio. Photography equipment from the 1970s still dominated the space. Lights, cameras, backdrop stands, and developing equipment. But it was the modern additions that made Marcus's blood freeze. Digital cameras, computer equipment, stacks of printed, photographs showing children from their neighborhood, recent children, some he recognized as playmates of Zoe's when she was younger. Karen Peterson hadn't just been protecting Harold Mitchell's legacy. She'd been continuing it. You see now, Karen said, standing beside a chair where Zoe sat with her hands zip-tied behind her back. His daughter looked terrified but unharmed. This isn't about the past, Marcus. It's about preserving beauty for future generations. Where's Martha Mitchell? Karen gestured toward a staircase. Upstairs, resting. She's been very helpful in explaining Harold's techniques, his artistic vision. Marcus felt rage building in his chest, but he forced himself to remain calm. Karen, these aren't artistic techniques. This is child abuse. You were abused, and now you're perpetuating that abuse. I was loved, Karen snapped, her composure finally cracking. Harold showed me that I was special, that I was worthy of attention and care. Do you know what it's like to be 16 and invisible to everyone around you? To have parents who barely acknowledge your existence? So you've spent your adult life making sure other children experience what you experienced? Karen's laugh was hollow and bitter. I've spent my adult life trying to recreate the only time in my life when I felt truly seen. When someone thought I was beaut? Martha Mitchell's frail hand reached into the pocket of her nursing home robe and withdrew a small digital recorder. I've been documenting everything for 47 years, dear. Every name, every date, every child Harold hurt, and every person who helped him do it. Karen's face went white. Martha, you can't. The people on that list, they'll destroy us both. They already destroyed me, Karen. They destroyed you too, but you were too young to understand it at the time. Martha's voice grew stronger as she spoke, decades of suppressed truth finally breaking free. But I won't let them destroy another generation. Marcus edged closer to Zoe, but Karen swung the pistol back toward him. Stay where you are. None of you understand what's at stake here. Then explain it to us, Marcus said. Tell us about the list. Martha Mitchell moved slowly into the studio, her walker clicking against the concrete floor. Despite her age and frailty, she commanded the room with quiet authority. The list includes 3 city council members, a retired judge, 2 police, captains, the former mayor, and half a dozen prominent businessmen. All of them knew what Harold was doing. Some of them participated. Karen's hand shook violently as she held the gun. They protected us. They made sure nothing bad happened to the children. They made sure nothing bad happened to themselves, Martha corrected. Harold had photographs of them too, Karen. Compromising photographs. That's how he maintained his operation for so long. Mutual assured destruction. Marcus felt pieces clicking into place. That's why the evidence was buried, instead of destroyed. Harold needed leverage over his accomplices. Harold was many terrible things, Martha said, but he wasn't stupid. He knew that powerful men who abuse children will eventually turn on each other if they feel threatened. The buried evidence was his insurance policy, but you had access to it, Marcus realized. You knew where it was hidden, Martha nodded. I helped bury it. Not because I wanted to protect Harold's secrets, but because I was gathering evidence for the day when I could finally expose everyone involved. Karen was sobbing now, the pistol wavering dangerously. You said you loved me. You said you'd take care of me. I did love you, dear. I still do. That's why I've spent the last 6 years trying to get you to stop. Martha's voice was infinitely sad. But you wouldn't listen. You kept finding new children, keeping Harold's work alive. Marcus's radio crackled in his earpiece. Sarah's voice, barely audible. Marcus, we have movement on thermal. Someone else is in the building. Before Marcus could respond, heavy footsteps echoed from the back of the building. A man's voice called out, Karen, where are you? We need to contain this. Situation now! Karen's demeanor changed instantly. The sobbing stopped. Her grip on the pistol steadied, and she looked toward the approaching footsteps with something like relief. In here! She called back. The man who emerged from the shadows made Marcus's blood freeze. Chief of Police William Bradshaw, a man Marcus had known and respected for years, stepped into the studio wearing civilian clothes and a grim expression. Chief Bradshaw? Marcus stared at the man in disbelief. What are you doing here? Bradshaw ignored Marcus and addressed Karen directly. I told you to handle this quietly. Involving the Thompson family was a mistake. I didn't have a choice. He found the box, and then that detective started asking questions. Detective Chen is outside with a tactical team. Bradshaw interrupted. We have maybe 10 minutes before they breach this building. Marcus felt reality shifting around him. You're on the list, aren't you? You're one of Harold Mitchell's accomplices. Bradshaw finally looked at Marcus with something like regret. Harold Mitchell provided services to certain members of the community. We provided protection in return. It was a mutually beneficial arrangement. Services? Marcus's voice rose with rage. You mean child abuse? I mean discreet documentation. Of certain activities involving consenting participants, Bradshaw said coldly. Nothing illegal ever occurred. Martha Mitchell laughed bitterly. Consenting participants. Harold's victims were children, Bill, some as young as 12 years old. They were compensated, Bradshaw replied without emotion. Their families received financial support, educational opportunities, jobs. Everyone benefited from the arrangement. Marcus stared at the police chief in horror. You've been covering this up for decades. I've been protecting this community from a scandal that would destroy dozens of families and cripple local government. Sometimes leadership requires making difficult choices. Karen nodded frantically. That's what I tried to tell you, Marcus. We were protecting people, protecting the community. You were protecting yourselves, Martha said firmly, and perpetuating harm against children. Bradshaw checked his watch. Karen, we need to resolve this situation quickly. The tactical team won't wait much longer. What are you suggesting? Karen asked. Bradshaw's expression was cold and calculating. Murder-suicide. Deranged neighbor kills father and daughter, then herself. Grief and mental illness over her own. Childhood trauma. Very tragic, but it ties up all the loose ends. Marcus felt ice in his veins. You're going to kill us all? I'm going to protect a community from destructive lies, Bradshaw corrected. Martha, you've had a good life. 47 years longer than you deserved after what you've done. It's time to let sleeping dogs lie. What I've done? Martha's voice rose with indignation. I tried to stop Harold. I tried to gather evidence to expose all of you. You enabled him for 30 years before you grew a conscience, Bradshaw shot back. You're as guilty as any of us. Marcus suddenly understood the full scope of the conspiracy. This wasn't just about Harold Mitchell's crimes. It was about a network of powerful men who had used their positions to enable, participate in, and cover up systematic child abuse for decades. How many others are there? Marcus asked. How many children were hurt? Bradshaw ignored the question and turned to Karen. Give me the gun. I'll make this quick. But Karen hesitated, looking between Bradshaw and Martha with growing confusion. I can't. Karen, Martha said gently, you were a child when this started. You were a victim. Don't let them turn you into a murderer, too. She's already a predator, Bradshaw said harshly. She's been continuing Harold's work for years. There's no redemption for her now. Karen's face crumpled. I just wanted to feel special again. I just wanted to matter. You do matter, Marcus said urgently. But not like this. Help us stop them, Karen. Help us make sure no other children get hurt. Bradshaw stepped toward Karen with his hand extended. Give me the gun, Karen. Let me handle this. But instead of handing over the weapon, Karen slowly turned it toward Bradshaw. You said you'd protect me. You said if I kept quiet, if I kept Harold's work alive, you'd make sure I was safe. You are safe, Bradshaw said carefully, but only if we contain this situation. By killing a 17-year-old girl? Karen's voice was barely a whisper. By killing her father? Marcus held his breath as he watched Karen struggle with the decision that would determine whether his daughter lived or died. Karen, Martha said softly, Harold made you believe that what happened to you was love. But love doesn't require silence. Love doesn't require secrets. Love doesn't require hurting other people. Karen's hand shook as she kept the gun trained on Bradshaw. All these years, all the children I brought to the studio, I thought I was giving them what Harold gave me. You were giving them trauma, Martha said gently. The same trauma you experienced. The same trauma that's been eating at your soul for 47 years. Bradshaw's patience was running out. Marcus could see the calculation in the police chief's eyes. He was preparing to rush Karen and take the gun by force. That's when Marcus made his move. Not toward Bradshaw, but toward the file cabinet Karen had glanced at earlier. If there was evidence of recent victims, recent crimes, it needed to be preserved before Bradshaw could destroy it. Stop! Bradshaw shouted, but Marcus was already pulling open the cabinet drawers. Inside, he found hundreds of photographs and digital storage devices. Recent photographs of children from their neighborhood, some taken at community events, others clearly staged in this very studio. Names, addresses, detailed notes about family situations and vulnerabilities, and a thick folder labeled Active Network Members, containing current photographs and contact information for dozens of people, some Marcus recognized as local officials, business leaders, and community pillars. Jesus Christ, Marcus breathed. This is still happening. You're still hurting children. Bradshaw lunged toward Marcus, but Karen swung the gun back toward him. Don't move! Karen, you're making a mistake, Bradshaw said through gritted teeth. These people won't understand. They'll destroy everything we've built. Everything you've built is an abomination, Martha said firmly. Harold convinced you that abuse was love, but deep down you know the truth. You've known it for years. Karen's resolve was crumbling. Tears streamed down her face as she looked at the photographs scattered around the studio. Decades of documented abuse, of stolen innocence, of children who had trusted her and been betrayed. "I can't undo what I've done," she whispered. "I can't give those children back their innocence." "No," Marcus said gently, "but you can stop it from happening to other children. You can help us expose the network and make sure every last one of these predators is held accountable." Bradshaw's radio cracks. Part 5. The safety deposit box key felt like it weighed 1,000 pounds in Marcus's pocket as he sat in the police station's conference room 3 days later. Around the table sat Detective Sarah Chen, FBI Special Agent Rodriguez, District Attorney Rebecca Walsh, and a federal prosecutor named David Kim, who had driven down from Washington that morning. "The scope of this investigation has expanded beyond anything we initially anticipated," Agent Rodriguez said, consulting his notes. "The contents of Martha Mitchell's safety deposit box document a conspiracy involving over 40 individuals across 3 decades. Marcus looked through the one-way glass into the adjacent room where Karen Peterson sat with her attorney, preparing for another round of questioning. She had been cooperating fully since her arrest, providing details about the network's operations that made Marcus's stomach turn. "How many victims are we talking about?" DA Walsh asked. "Preliminary count is over 200 children, Agent," Rodriguez replied. "Some were photographed once, others were more extensively documented. Karen Peterson has provided us with detailed records Harold Mitchell kept, including payment schedules to families. The payment schedules were perhaps the most disturbing aspect of the entire conspiracy. Harold Mitchell hadn't just abused children, he had systematically targeted vulnerable families, offering financial assistance in exchange for access to their children. Single mothers struggling to pay rent, families facing medical bankruptcies, immigrants afraid to contact authorities. "What about the current network members?" Marcus asked. "The people who were still active?" Federal Prosecutor Kim opened a thick folder. 12 arrests so far, including former Police Chief Bradshaw. We're moving carefully because many of these individuals hold positions that could compromise the investigation if they're alerted prematurely. Sarah leaned forward. "What about the digital evidence from Karen's house? The recent photographs?" "That's where things get complicated," Agent Rodriguez said grimly. "The photographs indicate the network has been actively recruiting new victims as recently as last month. We've identified at least 30 children who may have been recently photographed or worse." Marcus felt his blood pressure spike. 30 children. Are they safe now? "We're in the process of conducting welfare checks on all identified minors. So far, we haven't found evidence of physical harm, but the psychological impact—" Kim trailed off, shaking his head. The door opened, and a young FBI analyst entered carrying a laptop. "Agent Rodriguez, we've cracked the encryption on Harold Mitchell's digital files. You need to see this." The analyst set up the laptop and pulled up a series of spreadsheets that made the room go silent. Column after column of names, dates, and dollar amounts stretching back 40 years. But it wasn't just victims and predators, it was clients. Harold Mitchell wasn't just documenting abuse, the analyst explained. He was selling it. These spreadsheets show payments from individuals across the country, even internationally. The network was trafficking the material globally. Marcus stared at the screen in horror. "How much money are we talking about?" Conservative estimate? $23 million over 4 decades. The room erupted in stunned silence. This wasn't just a local conspiracy. It was an international child exploitation ring that had been operating under everyone's noses for generations. "Where did the money go?" Sarah asked. Agent Rodriguez pulled up another file. "That's the most disturbing part. 40% went to Harold Mitchell directly, 30% was distributed to network members as payments for protection and participation. And 30%, yes, 30% went into trust funds for the victims' families. College funds, medical expense accounts, home improvement loans. Harold Mitchell was systematically buying the silence of his victims' parents. Marcus felt sick. Parents had unknowingly accepted money generated by the sexual exploitation of their own children. Families had built their futures on the foundation of their children's trauma. This is going to destroy entire communities, D.A. Walsh said quietly. When this becomes public, the fallout will be devastating. It's already started, Kim replied. Local media got wind of Bradshaw's arrest. They're asking questions about a historical child abuse investigation. We have maybe 48 hours before this explodes into national news. Marcus's phone buzzed with a text from an unknown number. Withdraw your cooperation, or your daughter won't make it to her 18th birthday. He showed the message to Agent Rodriguez, who immediately signaled to the analyst. Can you trace this? Already on it. But Marcus, you and Zoe need protective custody immediately. No. Marcus stood up from the table. I'm not hiding while these people threaten my family. How many other parents are getting similar messages right now? Sarah pulled up a report on her laptop. Actually, 7 families have reported threatening communications in the past 24 hours. All parents of children who were identified in the recent photographs. The scope of the intimidation campaign was staggering. The network wasn't just trying to silence Marcus. They were systematically threatening every family that could testify against them. They're scared, Agent Rodriguez observed, which means they're going to get more dangerous. As if summoned by his words, Rodriguez's phone rang. He answered immediately. What do you have? His face went white as he listened. Are you certain? How many? We're on our way. He hung up and turned to the room. Martha Mitchell is dead, found in her nursing home room an hour ago, apparent heart attack. Marcus felt the floor drop out from under him. Heart attack? She was fine 3 days ago. The medical examiner is treating it as suspicious. But here's the problem. Martha Mitchell was our key witness. Without her testimony, we lose half our case against the historical conspirators. What about Karen Peterson? Sarah asked. She's been cooperating. Karen was a victim who became a perpetrator. Her credibility will be destroyed in court. Defense. Attorneys will argue she's mentally unstable, that her testimony is unreliable. The federal prosecutor looked grim. Without Martha Mitchell's testimony, we might only be able to prosecute the current network members. Everyone from Harold Mitchell's era could walk free. Marcus realized the full implications. The most powerful members of the conspiracy, the ones who had enabled and protected the network for decades, were systematically eliminating witnesses and evidence. They're cleaning house, he said. Martha Mitchell, the threatening messages to families, they're preparing for war. Agent Rodriguez nodded. Which is why we need to move fast. Every day we wait gives them more time to destroy evidence and intimidate witnesses. A knock on the conference room door interrupted them. A uniformed officer entered, looking shaken. Agent Rodriguez, there's been an incident at the Thompson residence. Marcus shot to his feet. What kind of incident? Someone firebombed your garage, sir. Fire department responded, but the structure is a total loss. Marcus's mind raced. The garage where he'd found the buried evidence. The garage where Karen Peterson had searched for the metal box. Someone was systematically destroying every location connected to the investigation. Was anyone hurt? Sarah asked. No injuries reported, but neighbors saw a white van leaving the scene immediately after the explosion. Agent Rodriguez was already gathering his files. That's it. We're moving to immediate arrests for all identified network members. If they want to escalate this to violence, we'll respond accordingly. What about witness protection? Marcus asked. For the families being threatened? We're working on it, but the logistics are complicated. We're talking about protecting potentially dozens of families, some of whom don't even know their children were victimized. Marcus looked around the room at the law enforcement officials who were trying to unravel 40 years of systematic abuse and corruption. They were good people, but they were fighting an enemy that had spent decades perfecting the art of staying hidden and eliminating threats. "I want to see Karen Peterson," Marcus said suddenly. Agent Rodriguez frowned. "That's not advisable. You're not law enforcement, and she's represented by counsel. She's cooperating because she wants redemption, but she's also the only person alive who understands how this network really operates. If we're going to protect these families and stop the intimidation campaign, we need her insight." Sarah stood up. "I'll arrange it. But Marcus, are you sure you want to face the woman who kidnapped your daughter?" Marcus thought about Zoe, who was currently staying with Jessica's sister in another state until the immediate danger passed. He thought about the 30 children who had been recently photographed and the 200 victims who had suffered over 4 decades. He thought about Martha Mitchell, who had spent 47 years gathering evidence only to die just as justice was finally within reach. Karen Peterson is the key to understanding how they recruit victims, how they identify vulnerabilities, how they maintain silence. If we're going to save these kids and stop this network, I need to understand how they think. An hour later, Marcus sat across from Karen Peterson in the interview room. She looked smaller somehow, diminished by the weight of her confessions. Her lawyer, a stern woman named Patricia Voss, sat beside her with a thick folder of plea negotiations. "Ms. Peterson has been very forthcoming about her involvement in recent activities," Attorney Voss began. "But she's concerned, AB,